Today we're starting a brand new fanfic. What if Female Deku got the Sukuna curse? Let's not waste time and get started. Smoke curled around the shattered remains of UA High. A scarlet sky pressed down on everything. Izuku Midoriya stood alone amid the ruin, breath short, eyes heavy with sorrow and something darker than despair. She had spent months carrying a power she never asked for, fighting monsters, saving people, losing people. She had been the symbol of hope. Now hope felt hollow. Her gloved hands trembled, not from exhaustion, but from the weight of every life she couldn't save. Every friend injured, every villain defeated only to rise again. She remembered All Might's tired smile, Bakugo's furious silence, Todoroki's quiet stare, the classmates who still trusted her even when she doubted herself. "Why do I keep pushing?" she whispered. The air behind her went cold. A presence stirred, not a villain from the hallway, not an enemy from a search mission, but something older, crueler, and infinitely patient. From the shadows came a voice, calm, amused, cruel. "Such relentless determination, and yet you sound tired." Izumi turned slowly. A figure appeared, half glimmer, half shadow, a smile that held centuries of hunger. Sukuna. Not as a dream, not as a cursed traitor trapped inside. A presence, real, touching the edges of her mind. "Izuku Midoriya," the spirit said softly, "you have been carrying something heavy. What if you didn't have to carry it alone?" Her heart hammered, chest tight. She had fought like a hero, she had never given in, but the world kept burning around her. The more she saved, the more it demanded. "What do you want?" Izumi asked, voice low, steady, careful. Sukuna's eyes glinted. "I want to be free," he said, "and you want the suffering to end. Imagine not resisting, not fighting a battle that never ends. Imagine choosing a different path." She had heard warnings. She knew the stories of curses, of power corrupted. She knew she could become something monstrous. But beneath the fear there was a thought that had been quietly growing over months of loss. If destruction was inevitable, if chaos would always return, maybe the only way to end the cycle was to become the storm itself and shape it. Izumi swallowed. "If I choose you, what would happen?" Sukuna's grin widened, his voice a whisper of velvet and steel. "You would become more than a hero. You would become a force that changes everything, not because you want destruction, but because you understand the world is broken." The ground beneath her feet trembled. She closed her eyes, listening to the screaming wind, the distant cries, the silence of those who no longer had voices. "We can decide how fast it ends," she whispered. "Take control." The change was sudden and absolute. Cursed energy flared like a storm released, bright and violent. Izumi's green hair fluttered wildly, eyes burning with new, unfamiliar light. Markings spread across her skin, crimson and black, beautiful and terrifying. Sukuna's presence poured into her body, not forced, but welcomed. She felt power like a river roaring through her veins. Not a quirk, not a borrowed strength. Something ancient, raw, alive. In the distance, sirens wailed, but the sound felt distant, as if a different world had just opened. Her first step was slow. She did not charge blindly. She walked toward the nearest fallen structure, the air thick with ash. Curses and villains in the area sensed the shift, and paused. They bowed, not in fear, but in recognition of a new ruler. Izumi kept her hands open. She didn't raise a fist or shout an order. She simply stood, letting the power settle, letting the world feel the change. Her voice, now deeper, echoed in the ruined hallways. Let the cycle end. The news spread faster than any siren. Students, teachers, heroes, villains, and the world beyond watched as Izuku Midoriya, once the beacon of hope, now bearer of a curse, walked through the devastated city with purpose. "All Might," someone whispered. Izumi's mentor stood at the edge of the scene, eyes wide and weary. He had trained heroes to be symbols of hope. He had never expected a symbol to become a storm. Bakugo clenched his fists, gritting his teeth. He had shouted at Izumi, pushed her harder, believed in her strength. Now he felt something more complex: fear, disbelief, anger, and the terrible understanding that nothing would be the same. Todoroki watched quietly, his gaze icy, thoughtful. Power was a tool and a curse. When wielded by someone who could feel both, it became unpredictable. Izumi didn't stop to explain. She didn't scream or rage. She simply moved forward, letting Sukuna's power and her own resolve shape each step. Days passed. The world changed. Curses that once ravaged cities now answered to a new order. Instead of random chaos, there was unsettling structure, territories, borders, rules. Villains no longer attacked at whim. They awaited instruction. The heroes scrambled. They tried to understand. They tried to fight. They failed. Izumi moved like a storm that knew where to hit. Not because she craved destruction, but because she was determined to end the endless suffering, even if it meant winning the war alone. In the dark of night, she stood atop a high building, looking over the city. The sky was not peaceful, but it was not drowning in fire either. A strange stillness hung in the air. Sukuna's voice echoed softly inside her mind. "You are stronger than I thought." Izumi closed her eyes. "I'm not doing this for power," she whispered. "I'm doing this for an ending." The world below waited. But even as she walked this path, questions stirred inside her. Could she truly control the storm she had become? Could mercy exist inside a cursed force? Would her name become legend or nightmare? The power pulsed, responding to her doubts and will. Izumi's next step was not just another fight. It was a choice to define what comes after, whether the world collapses under terror or rises with a new, brutal order. And somewhere beyond the horizon, heroes gathered, advising, planning, praying. They knew the fight had changed shape. They knew they were out of time. Izumi took a breath. She had stepped into darkness, but her eyes still held something unmistakably human. She was balance, chaos, hope, and ruin, woven into one cursed body. And the world would never forget the day Female Deku chose to carry Sukuna's curse. The first time she used it publicly, no one was ready. Izumi stood in the center of Musutafu as a swarm of high-grade villains advanced. Heroes surrounded the perimeter, watching, uncertain whether to attack her or the threat. Bakugo stepped forward first. "Deku," he growled, trying to sound confident, trying to sound angry. But beneath it, fear. She turned slowly. Her eyes were not fully hers anymore. "Stay back," she said quietly. That voice, calm, controlled, too calm. The villains lunged. And in one blink, they were gone. Not defeated. Erased. The cursed energy didn't explode wildly. It compressed, sliced, calculated. Precise. Cold. Terrifying. The street fell silent. Civilians stared. Reporters trembled. Todoroki watched her hands. They weren't shaking. All Might arrived seconds later, breath heavy, heart heavier. "Izumi," he whispered. She looked at him. And for one brief second, the girl who cried when she received one for all flickered in her eyes. "I'm ending it," she said. Not loud, not emotional, just fact. That night, UA emergency meeting. Aizawa stood at the front, eyes tired. "She is not rampaging," he said. "She's restructuring." Nezu adjusted his tie thoughtfully. Interesting word choice, Eraserhead. Bakugo slammed his hand on the table. "She's not a villain." Silent. Todoroki spoke next. "She isn't a hero either." The truth hurt. "Izumi Pov. The silence in my mind is louder than screaming." He doesn't shout. He observes. "You hesitate," Sukuna says. "I evaluate. You are changing. So are you. I can feel it. The more I use his power, the less chaotic it becomes. The more he feels what I feel. Every time I see a civilian cry, he feels the weight. Every time I spare someone, he questions why. Mercy weakens, he says. No, I whisper. It stabilizes. And he doesn't argue. Not anymore. Bakugo Pov. She looked at me. But not like before. Deku always looked at me like she was trying to catch up. Now, She looked like she was calculating if I was a threat. That pissed me off. But it scared me more. If she goes too far, I'm the one who has to stop her. Even if I don't want to. All Might Puff. I gave her power to save people. Now she carries something far beyond my understanding. Did I push her too hard? Did I teach her that suffering must always be endured? She thinks she is ending the cycle. But what if she becomes it? Days later, a major villain coalition formed. They didn't fear heroes anymore. They feared her. Izumi stood at the center of the battlefield again. But this time, heroes stood behind her. Not because they trusted her. Because they couldn't match her. Sukuna's voice echoed softly. You see, they rely on you now. That's temporary. You believe you can discard me later. I believe, she said calmly, I can redefine you. He laughed, but it wasn't cruel. It was intrigued. You think you're rewriting a curse. I think I'm rewriting fate. The ground cracked beneath her feet. But not from rage. From controlled pressure. The villains fell one by one. Not slaughtered brutally. Neutralized efficiently. The city didn't burn. It froze, and people began whispering something new. Not villain. Not hero. Queen. But evolution has a price. Late at night, alone, her hands trembled. The markings spread further each time. She could feel parts of her thoughts sharpening. Emotions thinning. Logic dominating. You opened yourself completely, Sukuna reminded her. And so did you. He paused. That pause meant something. Meanwhile, in a darker corner of the world, a figure observed the shifting energy. Other curses felt it too. If Sukuna was stabilizing, the balance of power would break. And if Izumi truly controlled him, then the world's strongest curse would no longer be chaos. It would be order. And order threatens everyone. Back at UA, Bakugo confronted her alone. You planning to become a dictator? He asked. She stared at the skyline. Planning to end endless funerals. You think this won't cost you? It already has. Her voice was soft. That hurt more than anger. Are you still you? He asked quietly. She didn't answer immediately. Instead, she turned, and for a brief second, the markings receded slightly. Yeah, she whispered. And that's why this scares me. But something neither of them noticed was that Sukuna didn't resist when the markings faded. He allowed it, and that meant something far more dangerous than rebellion. Because if the King of Curses was learning restraint, then the world was about to face something it had never seen before. A curse that chose, and a hero who no longer believed in mercy as weakness. And somewhere deep inside her mind, Sukuna smiled. Not because he was winning, but because for the first time in centuries, he wasn't alone. The next morning, the world woke up quieter. Crime rates dropped overnight. Villain activity reports decreased. Curses that once roamed freely were nowhere to be found. Instead, they gathered at the edges of the city, as if waiting. Watching, Izumi stood on the rooftop of UA, wind pulling at her hair. Students below pretended everything was normal. It was. You've stabilized the region, Sukuna murmured inside her mind. Impressive. I'm not done, she replied. You're enjoying this. She didn't answer, because part of her was. Not the destruction. The control. The certainty. No more scrambling, no more reacting. She was dictating the pace of the world. And that scared her. Aizawa approached quietly. You're isolating yourself, he said. I'm protecting them, Izumi answered without turning. From villains. She hesitated. From me. Silence stretched between them. Aizawa studied her posture. You're not unstable, he said carefully, but you're changing. I know. And Izumi finally turned to face him. And I don't know if that's a bad thing. Elsewhere, a coalition of underground villains gathered in secret. She's not killing randomly. She's reorganizing. She's building authority. A cold realization settled over them. She's not a curse. She's a ruler. And rulers must be challenged. That night, the attack came without warning. Not a chaotic assault. A calculated strike. Multiple villain factions hit different districts simultaneously, trying to overwhelm her attention. Heroes scrambled. Students panicked. Bakugo blasted into the air. Deku, we need you. Izumi closed her eyes. She didn't move immediately. She felt it. Every surge of aggression. Every flash of violence. Every scream. Sukuna's voice echoed softly. You can't be everywhere. Watch me. Her cursed energy expanded outward, not explosive, not wild. Precise, like invisible blades tracing through the city. Villains fell mid-movement. Weapons shattered. Curses froze. Within seconds. Silent, Bakugo hovered in the air, staring. That's insane. She landed beside him. You shouldn't push yourself like that, he said quietly. I'm not pushing. You're blading. She looked down. Her palm was split open. She hadn't even felt it. Later, in the quiet of her dorm room, the lights flickered. She stared at her reflection. The markings were spreading higher, closer to her eyes. You're losing balance, Sukuna said. No, you're dividing yourself. She pressed her hand against the mirror. I'm integrating. He went silent. The next day, All Might requested a private meeting. She entered the room calmly. He stood straighter than usual, hiding his worry behind pride. Izumi, he began gently, I've always believed in your heart. She smiled faintly. That hasn't changed. But your methods have. Yes. Do you trust yourself? She paused, then nodded once. I trust that I won't look away. All Might's shoulders eased slightly. And Sukuna. Her eyes darkened. I trust that he's learning. That was the moment something shifted inside her mind. Sukuna didn't laugh. He didn't mock. Instead, he spoke slowly. You believe I am changing. I knows you are. And if I stop, she closed her eyes. Then I'll stop you. A pause. Then, a quiet chuckle. You would try. Days turned into weeks. The world adjusted. People walked streets without fear of sudden attacks. Villains retreated into deeper shadows. But fear didn't disappear. It transformed. They didn't fear random chaos anymore. They feared her judgment. One evening, Todoroki stood beside her at the training grounds. You're carrying too much alone, he said. I always have. That doesn't mean you should. She looked at him carefully. You think I'm becoming something unrecognizable. I think you're becoming something powerful. That's the same thing. He didn't argue. But far beyond the city, something older stirred. If Sukuna was stabilizing, if a curse could evolve into controlled authority, then other forces would rise to restore imbalance. A new presence began gathering cursed energy. Not chaotic, not cruel, but competitive. And when Izumi felt it, her heart tightened. That's new, Sukuna murmured. Yes, and it's strong. She smiled faintly. Good, because balance isn't maintained without opposition. And for the first time, she wasn't afraid of what came next. She was ready, but deep inside, in the quietest part of her mind, a question lingered. If she continued walking this line between hero and curse, at what point would the world stop seeing the difference? And when that moment came, would she care? The answer came sooner than she expected. It started with whispers. Not from villains. Not from civilians. From heroes. She's too powerful. She acts without approval. She decides outcomes alone. Izumi heard none of it directly, but she felt the shift. Distance. Hesitation. Eyes that once looked at her with trust now measured her like a potential threat. You see, Sukuna murmured, order breeds suspicion. Fear always needs a target, she replied calmly. And you've become convenient. She didn't deny it. The new presence she sensed finally revealed itself. A rupture in the sky above the industrial district split open like a scar tearing wider. The air grew heavy, warped. Cursed energy poured out, not wild like Sukuna's once was, but refined. Intentional. A figure stepped through. Tall, cloaked, eyes glowing with ancient calculation. This world cannot be ruled by balance, the figure said, voice layered with multiple tones. It must remain unstable. Izumi landed across from it, boots cracking the pavement. Who are you? She asked. A correction. Sukuna stirred sharply. This one is not ordinary. I know. The being raised a hand. The sky distorted. Gravity bent. Buildings warped like reflections in shattered glass. Heroes rushed to evacuate civilians, but the air itself resisted movement. You've stabilized chaos, the figure said. You've broken the natural cycle. I ended pointless suffering, Izumi replied. You centralized power. And now the world has one point of failure. The attack came instantly. A pulse of crushing force slammed into her. She skidded across the asphalt, cracks spidering outward. For the first time in weeks, she felt overpowered. Sukuna's voice sharpened. Now you struggle. Good, she muttered, wiping blood from her lip. The being moved faster than expected, appearing before her, palm aimed at her chest. You cannot hold both sides forever. Its strike connected, and for a split second, her control slipped. Cursed energy flared violently. Not precise, not controlled, explosive. The district shook. Bakugo arrived mid-blast, shielding civilians with an explosion barrier. Deku, focus. She forced her breathing steady. Stay back. You think I can't handle it? This isn't about handling it. The figure laughed softly. You isolate yourself to protect them, yet they still stand beside you. Sukuna whispered inside her mind. Remove them, end vulnerability. No, you hesitate again. Because I'm not you. The being extended both arms. The sky cracked wider. Balance is weakness. Izumi stood tall. No, she said quietly. Balance is responsibility. Her cursed energy didn't surge outward. It condensed, layer by layer. Controlled. Precise. Sukuna felt it. You are compressing my power. I'm refining it. The air around her sharpened, invisible lines slicing through distortions in space. The being's gravitational field fractured. It stepped back for the first time. Interesting. Izumi stepped forward. You think the world needs chaos to evolve, she said, but chaos without direction only repeats itself. She raised her hand. The ground split cleanly beneath the figure's feet, not violently, but surgically. The rupture in the sky began sealing. You're rewriting rules, it hissed. No, she replied calmly. I'm updating them. With one final controlled strike. The distortion collapsed. Silence returned. The sky repaired itself. Heroes stood frozen. Bakugo lowered his guard slowly. That thing wasn't normal. I know. She exhaled slowly. The markings along her skin pulsed faintly, then settled. Sukuna's voice was quieter than usual. You chose control over domination. Yes. You spared it. Yes. Why? She looked toward the horizon. Because destroying every threat doesn't teach the world anything. A long pause. Then, "You are changing me," Sukuna admitted. She smiled faintly. "And you're changing me." That night, as the city slept peacefully for the first time in years, Izumi stood alone again. But this time the silence felt different. Not heavy, not oppressive, measured. "You understand," Sukuna said slowly, "that others will come. I know. Stronger ones. I hope so." He almost laughed. "You crave opposition. I crave growth." Another quiet moment passed between them. "You are not a hero anymore," Sukuna said. "And you are not just a curse." She looked at her reflection in the glass of a skyscraper. Markings faint. Eyes steady. "I don't need to be a hero," she said softly. "I just need to be necessary. And somewhere far beyond the city. Beyond heroes. Beyond villains. Beyond curses." Something ancient took notice. Because for the first time in history, a human had not been consumed by a curse. And a curse had not consumed a human. They had merged, and the world was entering an era it was never designed to survive. The tremor reached her 3 nights later. Not a physical tremor, a conceptual one. Like something in the structure of reality had shifted its weight. Izumi was awake instantly. On the rooftop again. Wind sharper and heavier. "You feel it," Sukuna said. Yes. It wasn't rage. It wasn't chaos. It was awareness. Something vast had noticed her existence. And it was evaluating. Far above the clouds, space folded inward like a breathing lung. A crack formed not in the sky, but in perception. Heroes across Japan felt it at once. Pro-heroes froze mid-patrol. Villains paused mid-plot. Curses stopped moving entirely. All Might looked up from his desk, heart pounding. That presence. Bakugo felt it in his bones. Deku. The air around Izumi thickened. The city lights flickered. Then, a voice descended. Not from one direction. From everywhere. "You have altered equilibrium." Izumi stood still. "I corrected imbalance. You centralized entropy." Sukuna stirred sharply. "This is older. I know." The clouds parted without wind. A shape emerged, not humanoid, not monstrous. A distortion. Like gravity given consciousness. "You are an anomaly," it declared. Izumi didn't flinch. "So are you." The distortion pulsed. "You have fused curse and host without consumption." "Yes. That was not permitted." She almost smiled. "By who?" Silent. Then, by design. The ground beneath the city began to hum. Energy networks fractured. Cursed flow reversed. People collapsed briefly under pressure. Bakugo launched upward without hesitation. He saw her silhouette against the distortion. "You're not doing this alone," he shouted. "Stay back," she yelled. But he didn't. Neither did Todoroki. Neither did dozens of heroes. They positioned themselves around her, not to stop her. To stand with her. The distortion shifted. "You remain attached to lesser units." "They're not lesser," she said quietly. "They're human." That attachment weakens structural dominance. It defines it. The distortion moved. Not attacking. Overwriting. Space bent toward it. Buildings warped. Gravity tilted. Sukuna's voice sharpened. "It is trying to erase you from causality." I figured. The pressure increased. Her bones creaked. Her lungs compressed. For the first time, fear flickered through her. Not fear of death. Fear of losing control. Sukuna felt it instantly. "You doubt. Only for a second. Then remove it." She inhaled. Slowly, compressed cursed energy inward. Not outward. Not explosive. She reached deeper. Past Sukuna's rage. Past her own fear. To the point where both met. Balance. You call me anomaly, she said into the distortion. But what you're sensing isn't corruption. Her energy shifted. Not violent. Not unstable. Integrated. It's evolution. The distortion trembled. You exceed parameters. Then update them. She stepped forward. Each step stabilized space instead of cracking it. Her presence anchored reality rather than distorting it. Sukuna felt something unfamiliar. Not dominance. Not cruelty. Pride. You are forcing it to adapt, he said. I learned from you. The distortion surged, attempting a final overwrite. Reality glitched, then snapped back. Izumi extended her hand. Instead of slicing, she sealed. The distortion compressed. Contained, not destroyed. Integrated into the world's structure. Silence fell. The sky cleared. The pressure vanished. Heroes slowly lowered their guards. Bakugo landed beside her, breathing hard. You're insane. She glanced at him. Yeah. Todoroki watched her carefully. That thing wasn't villain or curse. No, she replied. It was system. Days later, reports spread worldwide. No more random curse outbreaks. No spontaneous distortions. Energy flow stabilized globally. Governments were confused. Heroes unsettled. Villains quiet. Izumi stood alone once more at the city's edge. You've changed more than Japan, Sukuna said softly. I didn't plan to. You redefined balance. She looked over the horizon. Balance isn't about equal chaos. Then what is it? She thought for a moment. It's about preventing extremes. Sukuna was silent. Then, you no longer need to fear losing yourself. She blinked. Why? Because you stopped fighting me. And you stopped trying to dominate. A faint pause. You are not my vessel anymore, Sukuna said. And you are not my curse. She smiled faintly. So what are we? The wind shifted gently. Necessary. Below them, the city lived. Children played. People walked without looking over their shoulders. Heroes trained without panic. Villains hid without uprising. For now, peace held. But Izumi knew something deeper. Balance was never permanent. It required vigilance, choice, and if the world ever tilted too far again, she would be there, not as a symbol, not as a monster, but as the line between them. Peace did not mean normal. The world adjusted, but it never forgot. News channels debated her existence daily. Some called her the guardian of balance. Others whispered a darker title, the Cursed Queen. Inside UA, students trained harder than ever. Not because villains were rising, but because they didn't want to fall behind her. Bakugo stood alone in the training field one evening, explosions cracking the air violently. Don't go soft on us, he muttered under his breath. If you're becoming something beyond hero, then I'll surpass that too. Todoroki watched from a distance, frost creeping along the ground. She isn't leaving us behind, he said quietly. Bakugo scoffed. She already did. Izumi felt the shift in atmosphere weeks later. Not from curses. Not from systems. From people. Trust was returning. But cautiously, children waved at her again. Civilians didn't run when they saw the faint markings. Heroes didn't tense up immediately when she entered a room. But the distance remained. A respectful gap. A quiet acknowledgement that she was something different now. You feel isolated, Sukuna observed. Not isolated. Then, she stared at her reflection in the glass of a skyscraper, markings faint but present. Separated, You chose this. I know. And do you regret it? She thought about it. The fear that once ruled cities. The endless funerals. The chaos. Then she looked at the calm skyline. No. Sukuna's presence felt steady. Not oppressive. Not dominant. Aligned. One final test came unexpectedly. A rogue hero coalition, afraid of her growing influence, attempted to restrain her. Not out of hatred. Out of fear. They surrounded her quietly at dusk. Midoriya, their leader, said carefully, "We need to ensure global safety. You've grown beyond measurable limits." She didn't flare up. Didn't threaten. Didn't move. "You're afraid I'll tip the scale," she said calmly. "Yes." She nodded. "That's fair." The heroes exchanged confused glances. "You're not resisting." "I won't attack you for protecting the world," she replied. Sukuna murmured softly, "You could crush them." "I won't." She stepped forward slowly. "If I ever become unstable, you won't need to stop me." Their leader stiffened. "What does that mean?" She smiled faintly. "I'll stop myself." Silent. The coalition lowered their weapons. Not because they were overpowered, but because they understood. She wasn't ruling through fear. She was maintaining balance through choice. That night the sky was clear. No distortions. No ruptures. No storms. Izumi stood on the highest point of the city once more. "You have achieved something unprecedented," Sukuna said quietly. "And you. I am no longer simply destruction." She exhaled softly. "And I am no longer simply hope." The wind wrapped around her gently. For the first time, it didn't feel heavy. It felt earned. The world wasn't perfect. It never would be. But it was stable. And if it ever tilted too far, she would be there. Not as hero. Not as villain. But as the balance the world never knew it needed. That's it for part 1. Hope you like this fanfic. We are giving a 30-like target for this fanfic. If we complete it, then I will upload part 2. Hope you like it. Give your recommendation in the comments. Thanks for watching.